Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Interview at TO. I am Chickzama with 956, and I'm here with Pat and Landline. How y'all doing?
Hey, first
Right?
off, I'm doing all right. Second off, shouts to 956. Not only do y'all have the tightest tournament organization, but the name is just perfect.
It took us a long time to get to that name, too, so thank you.
I believe it. Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
I want to see
it's perfect.
the board have like the
The ancient board, yeah. There was a
yeah.
lot of names, a lot of different logos that we had to go through, and we finally landed on 956.
Look, when I name things, it's pretty simple. What do I want people to do? Play Guilty Gear. When are we gonna do it? Rev Tuesday. You can see the connecting thread, right? It communicates a lot. But 956 Productions, there's an element of like, if you know, you know, and that's awesome. Anyway, I'm doing good. We wrapped Rev Tuesday yesterday, and that was dope. And now we get to talk to you about more Rev Tuesday tournament action. So
Yeah, yep.
yeah,
And if you couldn't tell, these guys are clearly they're TOing for Melty Blood. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely true. You know, I've been a long time Actress Again player. I was there when Goichi first picked up the game, and
Yo, I'm like Goichi's my long lost cousin, by the way. Yeah,
You
know
don't
that
want to see
guy.
my F maids, all right? I break out the
It's
F
true.
maids for tag in battle or whenever anyone runs it at like NCD or Cali Burst or whatever. F maids is the truth. AACC is a dope game, but now we run a Rev 2, baby.
Yeah. Tell me, who are you, by the way? Who are you?
A landline. Why don't you start with this one?
Oh, okay. Well, I am just that guy that screams at people at at locals to tell them to get on the no. So my name is Landline. I am one of the TOs for Play Guilty Gear. I've been TOing for basically since I think like 2018 or 19, whenever WNF Oakland started. And you know, we kind of got really fortunate to run into Pat because you know, we might talk about this a little bit, but Exeter wasn't doing so hot in NorCal for a little bit, and right before NCR 2019. We had like a tournament, and then I ran into Starsky in bracket, and then I beat him, and then I saw his tweet was like, basically like, you know, it's bad when PatTheFlip's like, we're gonna have words after this, like, you know, basically like the scolded child, and I was like, oh yo, that was you, you know, we're thinking about doing a monthly, and we need more people, and then Pat replies, he's like, he'll be there, and you know, we kind of took it off from there. So, you know, it's been quite a ride. But yeah, I'm pretty much like the TO who like tells people to get on for their matches. You know, run the bracket during Rev Tuesdays, and usually I yell at Pat whenever he does something dumb. You know, I got to keep him honest.
Yep.
Gotta keep him in line.
Aaron says that he's a TO for Play Guilty Gear. He's a lot more than that. He is, I believe, his official title is Director of Operations or whatever. Basically,
Oh.
whenever we have an event, Aaron is the one that makes sure that everything runs the way it should. Sometimes it's bracket running. Sometimes it's making sure that like we have the right people doing the right things, that we've accounted for. Stuff like hydration, obviously very important to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Play Guilty Gear doesn't happen without Landline, and that is, I mean, in addition to that, he's probably the best active Elfelt that we got in the Bay Area. So you know, we need that matchup practice. He is always making sure that none of us can call a lack of an ignorance of Elfelt as an excuse for losing in bracket. And then
See
we
him
got
down
me.
there. See him down there. He's like so bashful. Like, oh, yeah, well, I see that.
Look, someone's got to gas him up. All right.
That's true. I'm
Wait,
always
let me see
gassing
it.
other people up.
Yeah. Then you got me. I'm PatTheFlip, also known as Patrick Miller. Been playing fighting games and holding it down in the Bay for longer than I suspect some of our tournament entrants have been alive. I started with Capcom versus SNK2 back in the day as a competitor. Got into all kinds of writing and streaming and commentary and teaching and all that kind of stuff around fighting games. But it was with Aaron and the rest of the Play Guilty Gear crew that I really got into TOing. which is always something I told myself I was never going to do. But you know, I sat down one night over dinner with my wife, and I was like, well, fuck. I guess if I want to keep playing Rev2, then we're gonna have to run some events for Rev2. That was close to when Aaron started TOing. I think. I forget if you were doing stuff at Wednesday Night Fights before then, like running other brackets. But
I did a BB tag in uni before.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it was a stroke of luck that we met, and but before actually showing up at Wednesday Night Fights Oakland, I had seen him at a couple locals yelling really loudly, and I was like, man, what the fuck is this guy getting hyped? And then once you hear him cheer for either the dude you're playing against or you, that's when you start to understand the value of having a booming voice besides just yelling at people to get them to go to the brackets.
Nice. So, you said it was like a stroke of luck, right? So, like, how did you like get into TOing? You know, like
Well,
what made you
for
decide
me,
that?
Yeah, I think we had pretty different paths to it. Landline, well, I'm sure he'll talk a little bit. He has a background in events, like he loves doing that shit. But for me, I'm like, events are messy. When I write something, I just put it out there. People read it. I don't have to deal with it, right? Streaming, you know, I just get to turn on my computer, do the thing, don't have to worry about anything else. Events, you got a bunch of people. You got to make sure that they're having a good time, that it's comfortable, that they got everything they need. You know, it's a messy work, and so I told myself I was never going to get into it. And then, basically, like Aaron was saying earlier, they ran like a pre-NorCal Regionals Rev2 like tune-up bracket, and that was the first time I'd gone to the Oakland venue, the Esports Arena Oakland. RIP to that one, man. It's a nice venue. And saw how many people were down to show up for Rev2 on like a random Wednesday. I was like, all right, well, you know, it's a little bit of a commute, but I can do this. And seeing Aaron and seeing some of the other guys roll up, like Starsky mentioned, Aaron mentioned Starsky earlier. He's another core member of the Play Guilty Gear crew. We're like, all right, well, as long as we keep showing up, other people will keep showing up to play, and that was pretty much it. We wanted to make sure that people who wanted to play this game, because you know netcode's not great, it's a pretty niche game, so it's not easy to find at locals all the time, right? Especially as the newer games come out. Wanted to make sure that anyone who still wanted to play this game could, and the best way to do that is to run brackets and to you know make sure that people got plenty of casual setups. We made our stuff free to make sure that people could enter, like even if they just wanted to check out the game.
Oh wow!
And yeah. There's the only prize pool we've ever offered for any of our events is I will give the winner $20. That's it.
Yo, $20 is like a lot of burgers. All right, I'll take it.
Look, I mean, for when it was in person, we were just doing that stuff as like, hey, like we want to make sure your gas and parking is covered, right? Like,
right.
If you did us the favor of coming out to kick our asses, and yeah, we want to make sure you weren't going in the hole for that, right? But yesterday, Why Not won a 44-person bracket of net play with a bunch of great players in there, right? Got $20. That's the prize, right? It's a little something extra, right? Like when I like to ask people what they spend it on, sometimes it's like, oh, I got myself like a nice sandwich for lunch the next day or something like that. But yeah, we managed to find a group of people who are just like playing the game for the love. That's all, and it's been super sick.
That's actually the reason why I got into TOing as well. So I understand that. Like, I was under like the assumption that CF was going to be like the last one, and it may be. I don't know. Like my main thing is VBCF, so I'm like, well, there's not anyone really doing a lot of like heavy CF stuff. I'm like, well, I want to play this game still, so I guess I have to do something, right? So
Yep.
I get it.
Yeah,
like
and then with Landline, with Landline, like he got into this completely differently. I think he told a bit of his origin story already, but he also like worked in events and stuff like that. He helps out with which one is it's Fanime, right?
Yeah.
Oh really?
I've been doing events since like 2006, so like basically over half my life I've been like helping out with events in one way or another. But yeah, like when Pat rolled up, because I'd seen Pat before. You know, he was like the super tall chip player. You know, there's like, you know, two really good chip players. It was like Bears and Pat. And, you know, I would still see Pat at like the monthlies like Cali Burst or NorCal Dogfight. But when Pat showed up, we're kind of like, hey, you know, like we've seen Pat stream before, and he's always like, yo, play Guilty Gear and running through lobbies with people, and we were just kind of like, you know, he was like, yo, I'm interested, like I could use some help, and I'm like, dude, I'm there, like anything you need, like I've been TOing, you know, did commentary, and basically was just like, yeah, I basically did a bunch of random stuff, like I used to be on the radio when I was a kid, and all this other random stuff, so I was just like, yeah, like you need anything, I got you, you know, I'm not too worried about that. So like for me, yeah, TOing was just like another way, because I basically showed up at ESA because my homie Juice, who's another TO for another local that we frequent all the time.
Shout out to Tagging Battle.
Yeah, shout out to Tagging. He was trying to get really good at Dragon Ball, and that was like his first like tag game, like you know, anime style game that he was trying to get really serious with. So I was like, okay, I see like ESA has like a scene, I'll go and, you know, kind of check it out, get some games, you know, maybe get a little better, try to like get people who want to play the game together. And you know, that didn't really work out great, but I ran into Brett, you know, everybody knows Brett, and Brett, you know, is like the beacon for anime games in NorCal, and he was like showing us all these other games, and I was like, yeah, I kind of want to help out, you know, BB Tag, Uni, you know, they really were cool games, but like Rev always, I like was that game, I was like, I want to play it. Like ever since that Evo Japan Omito versus Nage, I was like,
oh my god,
I need to get in there. And like my, you know, two of my really good friends, Nuclear Papaya and Takanasi, were like, you know, they're brothers, and they were always playing all the time. And like Nuclear Papaya was like my college roommate and like my FGC like brother basically, and you know, he had moved on from like Capcom games to Rev2, and I was like, you know, I basically told him, I was like, I'm gonna we're finish this like thing I'm working on, and I will take the game serious. And literally the night I finished like a big test, I like opened up Machivo's like, you know, long thing and read it for like the third time, trying to see like how do I understand like Guilty Gear, and you know, like kind of the rest is kind of history.
I like how you immediately like, yeah, I finished my finals, now it's time for Guilty Gear.
You know, I have that's my some dedication, right?
Yeah.
It's a lifestyle, all right. I just got off work and I'm like, all right, time to knock out this interview. We'll get some gear in between.
Good. So, I'll admit though, I've dabbled in Rev. I didn't play a whole lot of it. I was a fan of Raven, but I feel like there's like a lot of people that are like either half on for like Rev, half on for Strive. Like, what made you guys feel you wanted to drift more to Rev over Strive, or if you play both?
I gave Strive a little bit of a shot, but it's definitely not a game for me. I play I mostly play Rev2, and then I'll play Plus R on the side. I think Plus R is a great game, and there's a lot of cool like crossover that you get from learning both games at the same time, especially because I play Chip in both. But for me, like, Rev2 hits this very specific sweet spot for Guilty Gear, where like there is enough. There's enough technical stuff and enough just mastery, right, in terms of all the things that you gotta learn how to do in order to compete and be stronger at the game. And I never feel like I'm running out of things to do, right? Like, I started with Guilty Gear in XX, actually, when I went to Sunnyvale Golfland, and they had the XX cabinet. At that time, they were I think the only XX cabinet in the Bay Area. And I just washed out of a CVS2 bracket, and a friend of mine who's like saw me kind of salty. He's like, "Hey, come check this game out." And so he showed me Faust, and I was like, "Oh, this seems pretty cool." And then they got it at the Barricade, the UC Berkeley Barricade, which is kind of my home stomping grounds for a long time. And at first, everyone was playing Soul, and then we got a bunch of people learning the Slayer, like bite loops into IK. But I landed on Chip, and I was like, "Hey, this dude's got a teleport. The Rekka seem pretty cool. We can turn invisible. Like Gamma Blade is tight. Like, yeah, I think I'm in on this." And so I played XX for a couple of years, and then I'd kind of like drift in and out, checking out like Slash, Accent Core, that kind of stuff, very little bit. And it was when Sign came back out, and I was like, "Oh shit, I might be more ready to go in on a Guilty Gear game." And then I ran into Sign Elfelt and Sign Sin and Sign Ramlethal, and I was like, maybe not. So I put the game down for a long time. I'd like mash on net play every now and then, but I wouldn't really like learn the good stuff. I'd mostly just do like kind of crappy XX stuff. And uh, and then I played Street Fighter V for a little bit, and I was just getting super frustrated with the game. It didn't feel like it rewarded the kinds of things that I wanted to get good at. So I started opening Exert up a lot, you know, for Rev1 and eventually Rev2. And I found that was the game that kind of it felt like the kind of game I wanted to play, right? Like when I got my ass kicked in Rev2, I was like, you are whoever beat me is just so obviously better at so many things that I'm not mad, right? I don't feel like I guessed wrong. I feel like I was outclassed, and there's so much more left to learn, which is not a thing that many fighting games these days made me feel. But it reminded me of playing XX or CVS2 back in the day, or Marvel 2, or even Marvel 3, where you're like, these are games that can last forever, right? And I'm like, when it comes to fighting games, and especially active competitors and TOs and stuff, I'm kind of an old man. I just turned 37. So I'm like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, I'm not trying to jump into all the new stuff. I'll let the kids have that, right? They can have Strive, they can have Street Fighter 6, whatever. What I want is the games that I feel like are going to last a lifetime, right? So it's something I could be playing 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, whatever. Play this shit in the retirement homes. And for me, it was like, yeah, there are other games that could do that, but none of them felt quite as good to me as Rev2. I love the art style and the animation, all the character designs. Like it's got a slightly more kind of, I think, updated and timeless look for me than Plus R does. Though I love Plus R, don't get me wrong. And you know, it's I personally like did not vibe as hard with like BlazBlue character designs. I played some Melty, I love that. Uni was really cool, but like Rev2 for me just kind of hits all the right notes around what the characters can do, how you learn them, like how the different systems work. You know, people talk up stuff like Blitz, which is kind of like a metered parry, right? Or kind of mix between a metered parry and focus attack, or Danger Time. People meme a lot about Danger Time. I'm like, I love all this stuff, right? And it's like when you find a fighting game that you can just look at and you're like, now there's, you know, even, you know, you can complain about balance or whatever, right? You might complain, oh, I dropped that, yeah, I pressed the button, but it didn't read press the button, whatever. Like when you stand outside of it and you're like, no, actually, I think everything in this game is dope. Like, you got to ride for those games. They don't come that often, you know.
Right.
I found I've been in fighting games for multiple decades at this point. And I found 2 games which I look at, I'm like, I'll play you forever, right? You find those games, you hold on tight, you make sure you got like 10 consoles and that they all work properly, right? You make sure you got all the hardware you need to play it, and you ride for that forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like one of the things I remember, maybe like an old like tweet series or maybe like a medium, but like Pat really put it like really well, where he was like, he saw people locally like, you know, Hagure, who is obviously in the crew, running, you know, old man games basically.
Shouts
right?
to
Like, always there
Hagure.
for VSAV.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we saw Hano, you know, who was like always every event brought like a setup for Plus R, just showing people like, yo, check out this character. Like if you're like, hey, I don't know how to play this character, you'd be like, oh, okay, let me run you through some stuff, right? And you really saw like the love they had for those games, and you were like, you know, basically convinced like you don't have to move on to the new one. You can stick with the game you love for like as long as it's possible to play it, basically. And that's kind of how we felt. And you know, like all the really good times, because like I would, you know, have similar things, right? In the big games I would go, you know, O2, and like things wouldn't go so hot, and then I would see like the anime people, you know, kind of playing, just having a conversation, right? Like, because I was basically just driving like to Concy to every like WNF Oakland I could, and just be like, he'd be like, oh, you know, not a lot of people showed up for Rev2 this week, and all this stuff basically was just like Dave Mendo like labbing, or like, you know, maybe like a couple people, right? And you see the dedication of guys like Day and like, you know, everybody in the scene, and you're just like, you know, this is like a community that I want to not only be a part of, but like kind of like keep up, because like, you know, not every new game is going to be for you. And when you have something you love, like, you know, if you have the energy and you feel like you can do something, you know, I always kind of looked at it like, yeah, I'll do something. And like the last Caliburst we ran, most of the people there were like people who were like in our beginner brackets, intermediate brackets, like people who even like pre and post pandemic. It's like crazy. Like we, you know, some of like our locals will be like, if you told us however many years ago that this was going to be this big, now they would have been like, no, there's no way, right? But like, it's just, it's amazing, and you know, like it's just Rev2 for Rev2, right? Like you find the game you love, like Pat said, and you wanna commit, and he's definitely right. Like I felt the same way. It's like whenever I lost, it's like there was an answer, I just didn't have it, right? It wasn't like something, you know, this or that was crazy, whatever. You know, those things happen. You know, it gets scrambly in most games, but like the thing that like always kind of inspired me was that like I could always get better. Like maybe I'm not doing the results that, you know, I had early success or whatever, but I know that the me today is better than the me yesterday, and so on and so forth. And like that's kind of, you know, rewarding when you get that feeling.
Yeah, I think that's like the most, like the biggest selling point for fighting games is that feeling of like you have this like giant rock in the middle of your road and then you have to just climb it. I think that's like the best part of fighting games, period.
Yeah. Rev2 gives you a lot of that stuff.
But yeah, I would say too, just like on a very topical, like trying out all three of the like Plus R, Rev, and Strive. I say I have more time into Strive, but all of them really feel like they're very different games. Like none of them feel like they're relative, but they feel all three different games entirely. So it's like you're not going to be double dipping, quote unquote, but you'll have a different experience no matter which one you play.
Yeah. There's definitely some neat things that you can get from crossing over between the three games. So I was competing in all three for a while, and it was fun to see like, oh, here's something in Strive that I probably would have never bothered to try out in Rev2 or Plus R, but Strive forced me to learn that interaction, and it actually still does apply, right? It's just not, it would have been like low on the priority list to learn that in the other games, but the fact that I learned it for this game still benefits me, right? And that's cool. Like I think it's, I mean I'm used to this in Street Fighter as well. Like I'll play Ryu and he's like different in all the games, but there's still a lot of crossover. So I think it's dope, and I've seen, you know, we generally encourage people to play all the games that they want to play, right? Like we're pretty big about like if you don't like a game, then you probably shouldn't play it, right? That was something that I had to learn, was like even if you can do well in a game, right? If you don't like it, if you don't feel like it's the kind of thing that rewards the stuff you care about, then you'll end up having a bad time, and you might make other people have a bad time too, which is just like not the greatest, you know. But it's always really cool to see. Like, we actually, it's funny, the other week we actually had a newer Kai player enter our bracket, and we had them play on stream, and we could see, oh, they're doing like the stuff that you can learn in Rev2 training mode, like a basic combo or something like that. They're doing this excellent, right? They clearly know how to play the game, but they don't do the things that tell you they're Rev2 players. They got tech trapped a lot, right? They got checked on by bike and parry. They weren't ready for Azami a lot, right? Got wake up thrown because they weren't used to playing a game where the throw wins on you know, one frame, and all that other stuff. And it was really cool to see that some stuff is applicable, right? You get that crossover, you get that broader grounding in how fighting games work or how Guilty Gear works. But then you also have like the specific nuances of each one that kind of really give it its flavor over the long term.
Yeah, like Plus R, obviously, like for a lot of people, it's like the legacy game, right? Like the game a lot of us come from. Well, probably XX and then Plus R, because Plus R is relatively newer. But yeah, like when kind of I played XX actually a little bit, and Plus R when it dropped on Xbox for a little bit actually. I played RoboGuy.
Oh shit! Okay.
Yeah. Well, there was like somebody who was like,
was wild.
The RoboGuy was, I just find him funny, like.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, you know, I played those games, but I never really got into it. You know, I was mostly a Capcom person because, like, you know, I'm basically an 09er. Like I went to arcades, but like I didn't get really big into it until like Neo vs. Clockwork, MVC2. I was like, yo, I want to play Marvel, like, and Marvel 3 came out. Yeah, so I was relatively later to FGC, so I used to play shooters before that. But basically, like when Plus R got rollback, I tried Plus R also, and the game is definitely fun. It definitely scratched that like Marvel itch where it's like split second decisions where it's like, oh no, I really got to react to what's going on or something bad's gonna happen, right? But yeah, when Strive dropped, we were all kind of like, Pat was like talking to the rest of the crew, and we're like, we still want to give Rev2 players that home, right? Because like I mentioned before, right, we saw like Haguri and Hano show the love they had for their games. So it kind of worked out that the rest of us were like, yeah, it's an okay game, but it's not necessarily for us. So when we all kind of decided, like, we'll open up to people who want to run Plus R, like Sig ran a couple Plus R like beginner stuff, whenever people want to play Plus R, we have people who will definitely boot it up. Some people, like, there's a bit of a crossover with Strive, but it's like Pat said, you play the games that you love, and there are people who love the games that you don't necessarily like, and we're still open to let them, have the space and like help them out if they want to, do something with it, right? Like we basically brought Marvel 3 back for Caliverse, and people have been like, yo, like I really love Marvel 3, but yo, what's that game? Like I want to check out that game too. So it's an interesting time because the other two games got rolled back. They're doing fine. We got roll up netcode. So that's why we put all the time to make sure the games can coexist in our region.
Oh, that's a very noble cause. Like, I always say, if you put out something, people will come, and if they come, then they'll maybe check out something else. You'll retain some of them too. So it's really good. Well, I know you kind of already like touched on it, but I guess in depth, like, describe your scene. Like, you said it was like continuing to grow as well.
Oh yeah, it's actually kind of wild. Like if you look at the number of events we got and the number of players we got in events, like Rev2 is bigger for us than it was 3 years ago. Like I think we averaged usually like mid-20s for in-person attendance at Wednesday Night Fights Oakland. For Cali Burst, we're usually getting 30 or 40 people in a bracket. Same thing with Rev Tuesdays for net play. And our Rev Tuesdays are weekly, which is awesome. Cali Burst is a monthly. Tag and Battle also often pulling in like 20, 30 plus for Rev 2, which is, it's awesome. But the like Landline said earlier, like before we got into the game, there were TOs running Rev 2 events, but they were running it because people would show up for it, which is great, but they weren't running it because they love the game, right? And so it was on the roster, and so people would show up and play, but there was a certain kind of warmth and a certain enthusiasm that I think the Play Guilty Gear crew really brought when we first started running stuff, because we just wanted people to play with, right? So when we first ran our events, when we ran our brackets at Wednesday Night Fights Oakland, there was no entry fee. We did single elim was the other thing. We did single elim so we could run through the bracket faster. And the reasoning was basically like, look, if you want a real ass bracket, if you want to know who's the best in the Bay Area in any given month, we can go to Caliburst, you can go to NorCal Dogfight, right? But we don't have time to do that on a Wednesday night, right? Like when everyone's driving all over the Bay just to get there. So let's get through the bracket as quickly as possible. It's free, so it's okay. And then let's get the casuals, because the casuals are the real reason why you want to sit down and play this game. You know what I mean? And it was great, because it meant that, like, since there was no entry fee, it's not like the top players were showing up because they wanted to get their lunch budget covered, right? It meant that the top players who showed up because they cared about the game. They just wanted to play it with people, right? They wanted to help support the scene, which is awesome, Like Daemendo, Bears, Effortless, like at least one of those three was at almost every single Wednesday Night Fights that we ran. and they got my $20, which basically covers gas and parking, right? So they were doing it for the love. But that also made it really easy to appeal to new players as well and be like, hey, check this game out. You've probably seen it around before. Maybe you're new because you got in through Dragon Ball or through Sam Show or through Blaze Blue Cross Tag or something. You've probably seen this game before and you don't really know what's up. Well, here I am. I'm going to tell you, hey, you want to enter the bracket? It's free. You can just sit down. You can start learning immediately. You got a character you like? Hey, cool. We'll show you how to play them, right? You know, you're kind of new. You're looking for someone to play with? Look, go play with that person over there. They're kind of new too. They just started last week, right? We started doing that with our local brackets, and then we got the chance to run beginner brackets at Caliburst, and that's where things kind of turned around because running beginner brackets is a really good way to show people like, hey, the community playing this game cares about the new players playing, right? If you're playing the new Smash or the new Street Fighter or whatever, you know, like a lot of the kind of the mainstream games that aren't hurting for entrance or anything, like you roll up as a new player and maybe people will be nice to you, maybe they won't, right? Like the tournament does not require like actively reaching out to people necessarily in order to sustain enough people to have an event because they got the hype, they got the marketing, it's the fresh new stuff, right? But for Rev2, ain't no one marketing that shit except us. So we got it.
Hey, I'm about to say, I know it's a shirt.
Yeah.
So we got to be the ones out there riding, right? Because like the thing is, and I say this all the time, like if you're playing fighting games and you're not doing it for the people, like for the experience of playing with people, and it's not the people that get you coming back every week to like, you know, to mash games and practice combos and whatever, you're probably not getting everything you could be out of playing that fighting game, right? And so we ran the beginner brackets, and we didn't just run the beginner brackets. We like, you know, at first we were giving out prizes and stuff. I think the first winner of the beginner bracket got like a DVD of 6th Sense.
Yeah. Manabe gave them like the 6th Sense, and then like I remember somebody won Kingdom Hearts 3, and they're like, "Nah."
Oh yeah.
They just turned down.
Yeah. Well, we buy pizza for them too. We're like, hey, come here. We want to make sure you don't have to leave the venue to go get food, right? So let's all just hang out, eat some pizza, and play some games today. You know. And that we started doing those brackets a couple years ago before COVID and everything. We kept on doing it during COVID when there were a lot of people with just downtime that, you know, wanted, you know, they had to stay at home. They figured it was a good idea to get into fighting games. But that just grew this scene of people who have stuck with it for a couple of years now and are starting to actually get pretty good. And they're starting to be like, hey, I want to travel. We started sending some people to Frosty Faustings. We have people going to Combo Breaker. We got some of our beginner bracket babies all grown up and ready to go to Evo now for Vortex Gallery. I don't even know if they're signing up for any main games. I think they're just going for Vortex Gallery and Rev2.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a real warm community, you know. I kind of compare it sometimes to like what the Super Turbo community went through to preserve like their scene, right? Because you know that game, they got a different circumstance, right? But like Super Turbo didn't actually get that wide release in the U.S. You know, like most people remember Super Street Fighter 2 on SNES. Or playing Hyper Fighting or something like that. Maybe they played, you know, classic Street Fighter 2 World War in the arcade or something. But if you wanted to play Super Turbo, you needed to make sure that it was represented at events. And it wasn't easy. You had to get like the Super Gun set up. You had to make sure people had the right monitors, all that kind of stuff. And that community really rallied, right? So I look at that and I'm like, you know, some people are going to get into the fighting game stuff because they see a brand new game and like, oh, this is my chance to you know, dive into this for the first time. And that's fine. We see a lot of people show up for Strive events like that. And they're like, oh, this is my first time going to a local. And that's cool as heck. And you know what? Sometimes we're going to show those people because we got the Strive set up and we got the Rev2 set up. And they're going to be like, wait, how come my character can do so many more things in Rev2? Oh, this is kind of cool. Wait, this is a lot faster. There's a lot, like the combos seem longer. Like, all right, let's try this out too. You know, and it's what they find is that like in a scene like ours, right? It's not enough for people to just want to be good. Like they stick around because they want to help others be good too, right? They want to help other people level up so that they can level up, but also because it's really fun to exchange knowledge about fighting games. You know, our scene is I mean, it is hands down the nicest and the best and the hypest fighting game community I've ever been a part of or I've ever seen in my decades around this activity. So yeah, I think you know, it's not for everyone, right? Like some people want to kind of hype monster on the new stuff, and I respect it. But if you're down to spend some time with a classic and a community of people who love the game they're playing, Rev2 for F2, baby.
Yeah, for me it was definitely like, you know, I got in through like a big game, and the community was kind of scary, and I didn't have the best experience like playing like the bigger games, and kind of when we were starting to do this, I was very much like adamant, like I'm gonna make sure like the new people never felt like I felt, right? Like scared to ask somebody a question, or like, you know, like we're all gonna get stream nerves and all that stuff, right? You go far in bracket, you're gonna have to end up on stream, but like, you know, we want to be like, yo, like I noticed you just did that and you couldn't do that before, that's really awesome, or oh look, they tried that new thing, and so on and so forth. And you know, we wanted to be really like nurturing for new people, because like for me, like learning the game, I showed up at a time where like I went 0-2 because like I had to play Pepsi and like Forest, and like both those guys would like get top 8s at like NCD, right? And I'm just like, oh, what do I like? What do I do, right? And when we started like getting all the new people, like they were all like, oh, this character looks cool, but I heard they're hard. And Pat was always like, look, like you want to play something because it's hard, right? Because you got stuff to learn, and don't let that like, you know, gate you off from playing the character that you want to play, basically. And a lot of like kind of the groundwork was here, like even before we kind of like brought it back, right? So like in Sacramento, like Adapt was like teaching people the game. He'd go to like CFDs, and he'd be like, yo, like anyone want to play Rev2, like I'll teach you. And then like he'd be like, yo, you can do a house session, and he taught me a lot of stuff. And you know, a lot of the people got really good in Sacramento because they went to Adapt stuff. Like Nuclear Pie got really good, like Takasi was training down here, you know, like so when we were doing stuff, Adapt was like, yeah, I'll show up like all these miles on a Wednesday on a whim. And he's just like, just to get beat up by Dave Mendo, hell yeah, I'm there, bro. And you know, like it's easy to do that for a monthly, like easy in quotes, right? But like it's super hard every week or every other week to do that. And he did that, and you know, he helped like the people in Taggin and Sac like kind of grow from that. Like Espada, who was the other TO for Taggin, like kind of got brought in because he was like, oh, you know, I'd always kind of seen Rev2 and I kind of want to play this, but like when we did beginner brackets, you know, we kind of started planting the seeds of rivalries on all these people, and he was like, yo, you know, like me and Irene, we go kind of even, kind of close, you know, I want to really put some time in this game. And Irene's like, I'm not gonna, you know, lose to some degenerate May player, you know, I'm gonna parry his ass. And like you know, and Irene also did a lot of work with her community, and a lot of those people like who often don't get a chance to kind of express themselves and, you know, be themselves.
Shouts to Holy Order.
Yeah, shoutouts to Holy Orders. They got a place where they could not only be themselves, but also, you know, play the game and learn the game and, you know, just grow. And our scene, you know, it's like I think we joke about me being like, you know, like the plus bonus or the, you know, like the boost for cheering, but like seriously seeing like new people, like I heard one of our newbies almost sent Elvin to losers, or I saw like you know, one of our newer people take out people like Irene beat Marlon in a set, like, you know, it's like stuff we were just like you know, these are people that we used to look up to, you know, they're the gods of the games, and we're giving them like, you know, the business now because we're here and we're putting time into the game. And it's just like you feel like a parent watching your kid like graduate or, you know, like leave the house or something like that, right? You're just like the pride, and, you know, or, you know, you kind of feel like, yeah, like I did that because Pat talked about this, you know, I always like cap on him occasionally when he gets beat up by one of our new people, that Pat's vision, because he was like, yeah, I'm not gonna fly all the way to Mikado to get games, right? You know, he's tall and I'm tall too, I get that, right? I don't want to be stuck in a plane for over like half a day, just to go there, get washed on like laggy cabs or whatever. We want to stay here and like watch our scene grow, so we can grow without having to go too far. And that's what's been happening, right? Like the pandemic did kind of make things a little bit difficult, but like it's crazy to think like it grew even bigger post-pandemic because we were like, hey, like we're gonna put the time, we're gonna put the effort, and we're gonna help these people grow. And now we've got like our intermediate bracket only mids. Like everybody's like, yo, I want that art by Irene Ko. Like I gotta win that bracket so I can get banned and get the cool trailer by Okami. And it's just like yeah, it's crazy. Like everything we do, like Retromania, like as a giant wrestling fan, I'm just like, I can't believe I got to do that, and then like hype people up, and people are like, yo, you're like like JR, right? And I'm like, dude, that's crazy. Like you would but yeah, we do these things.
You get into Rev2 because you're like, this is a cool game and it seems like a cool community of people, and hey, they gave me free pizza. And then like 6 months in, you're like, my life has become anime pro wrestling now. Like, what happened? Right? Like we like to joke that our beginner bracket is like the Naruto Chunin exam, right? Like in other games, a lot of times, especially the big games, like the only thing that's hype for people is seeing the highest level of people play, and then maybe if someone else can take a game off that, or you got a cool upset, right? But we ran that beginner bracket and we saw new players doing all kinds of wild stuff, and we're like, oh no, this is excellent. This is actually more fun, right? Like, don't get me wrong, I love watching Daemendo and Bears play each other. That was the grand finals of Cali Burst this month. It'll probably be the grand finals for many more Cali Bursts, right? And I will never get tired of watching that match. But seeing two people have been just playing for a couple months start figuring out how to really mess each other up, oh my god, mwah. And then when you look at one of them and go, oh, okay, the next time they play, this one's not going to win, right? Like they get the run back. That's when the storylines come in, and we pay attention to all that, because for us, it's just as much fun, sometimes more fun, to watch the homies beat the crap out of each other and tell stories about it than it is to do it yourself, right? It's like I said, there's no scene quite like what we got going on with Rev2 right now.
That's what y'all kind of sold me on it. Like, I gotta go visit over there sometime.
Oh, pull up!
Yeah, pull up, roll up netcode.
I have to roll. I have never been to Cali, so you know what? I might hit you all up.
Hey, where you at?
Texas.
Okay. So we got some folks putting things together in Texas. The net play to Texas is not bad, so we could probably get you connection tested if you ever want to play in Only Mids or Rev Tuesday. But we've recently, so the thing is, like we call our crew Play Guilty Gear, but we're invested in making sure everyone can play Guilty Gear. We went to Combo Breaker and we ran their side tournament because we wanted to make sure that Rev2 was represented there. We're doing it with y'all at Vortex Gallery because we want to make sure that it belongs on the same Evo floor as everything else, right? But we're not the only crew out there doing the work, right? Midwest TXT holding it down. There's a new beginner net play local for the South called Blitz War that's going on right while we're having this conversation. There's Dust Bowl, Goober Gear, and the TSB folks holding it down with Deadass God's Gift on the East Coast. Like, there's all kinds of events out there that are run with people who we know and we're working with to make sure that everyone is like as covered as possible, right? So you're in Texas, we can hook you up with some Texas players, and you come out to California, we'll show you a good time.
Sure. I'm definitely looking.
Hey, there's people who like CF too, you know.
Yeah.
I always will pull up for CF. But yeah, just hearing you two just talk about Rev, like, you can just tell just how much passion that you guys have for the game and for your scene. It's like this is like a small niche family that you got going on there. You're seeing your players grow, and you're just happy just to, like, you're just happy to be there, you know? That's the feeling I get from like hearing you all.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like seeing Irene do like the Jamley family, like, and then they took the photo at Combo was just like, that was great. Like, it's just, it's crazy to think, like, just like all these like people that you've heard about, right? Like, I heard about Amadeus, like when Amadeus played like Pat, I was like, damn, like, Carlos, that jam player. But now Alma's doing the TXT thing, right? Yeah, never again, like, maybe something will happen at some event.
Hey.
But yeah, like, and having like people, you kind of were looking up to like in the scene be like, I really appreciate all the work that you've been doing. It's just like great. Like we went to the anime session I went to was like in 2020. Like all of us were like watching Effortless versus Red Herb to get into top 8 off stream, not a single person around. And then when Effortless won, we all popped off. We were going crazy. Or when like Jason won, we're all in the crowd chanting for Jason. Or when Effortless beat Loxin, we did the same thing. Like we're going crazy. If you watch that like anime ascension, like I think like Sandfish, like yo, calm down. And you know what? If we heard him, we would have got even louder. We were like, hell no. Like yeah, it's just like this is the love. You know, we put in all this love, and we get the love back. And like watching like everybody just get together to play the game they love, especially in these hard times. It's just like it's magical.
It definitely makes it worth it at the end of the day. So, I guess this is our final and last question. So, you said there was already people going to Vortex Gallery this year, so what can people expect from your game on a competitive level?
Well, you can expect a lot of wild stuff, right? The thing about Rev2 is that it is very, very hard to be consistent. And historically, the players who are the most consistent, we're talking like the kind of the OGs from who either started with Sign or sometimes earlier than that, right? Like the people who are the most consistent in Rev2. Some of them stuck with the game, but some of them haven't, or some of them have kind of put it on the background or on maintenance, right? And what we're seeing is a wider variety of people get into the game and explore it at kind of different levels, right? Mm-hmm. So if we were even like 3 or 4 years ago, I could probably take a bracket, go through it with Aaron, and we'd be able to predict the top 8, probably like maybe not necessarily ordered too accurately, but we could probably guess with reasonable accuracy who's going to be in top 8. These days, not so much. Mm-hmm. We got and we saw this at Combo Breaker. Let's see, grand finals at Combo Breaker was Peppery Splash versus Crocs and Socks. Mm-hmm. Right? Peppery Splash has been playing the game for a long time, and he's always shown up in grand finals or in top 3s for as long as Rev2's been a kind of main tournament game. Crocs and Socks started in games with Smash. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'd ever seen Crocs turn up to an event until Frosty Faustings. I think he might have been haunting some like East Coast locals or something.
Yeah,
like that.
He was at ECT.
Yeah.
And he sent Lost Soul to losers, so like that's like pretty big deal.
So like it's at this point, like we like to say that in Guilty Gear, but especially like Rev2, anyone can get it, right? Like you might be on top of your game, you might be on top of the world, you might have all the matchup practice against all the best, but in a 2 out of 3, you might just get caught unawares. You might get scraped by someone you ain't never heard of before, right? So it's a really awesome game because when you see the consistency, you celebrate that for what it is. And I really hope that we get a lot of the kind of classically strong players showing up, because and a lot of them are going to be at Evo anyway, so why not take some time in the side bracket and try and take our money. But there's so much room for all the newer players to who have been catching up, who have been grinding, right? Because if you were on top of the game 3 years ago and you weren't still continuing to refine your stuff, it is entirely possible that someone's going to knock you out that you never heard of, right? People are figuring out like I guess the way I've described this before is like we weren't done with the game. We hadn't figured out everything there was to figure out. I don't even think that Japan figured out everything there was to figure out in Rev2. Rev2 is not solved by any means. There's just too much stuff in the game to feel like we're done with it, a couple of years in. So what you're getting is both like it's a game that's kind of in an advanced and refined stage, and so you can see a lot of strong and consistent play, right? But you also have room for just people to bust out the wildest stuff and to really innovate with how they play the game and their characters in ways that you might not have been ready for, right? Like as an example, Bears is undoubtedly the top chip Xanath in North American Rev2, and he was on top of the world for a while. He plays chip a certain kind of way. If you look at the way that I play chip, it's very different. And I'll run into a lot of people who play me expecting Bears. I'm not as good as Bears, they're expecting berries and they're getting me, and they've never played with me before. And it's like every character in the game has the potential for that kind of variation, right? So there's a lot of just personality that really comes through in this game. And because we've been around, we've been studying, a lot of times, like, you know, Aaron, I'm sure, could commentate any Elfelt and look at that and go, ah, yes, I've seen this Elfelt because I've watched so much of their footage when I was learning Elfelt myself, right? So there's so much room for us to just like really dig into how the ins and outs of everyone play the character that ends up just being a really, really interesting stuff. Everyone feels really unique, especially once you get like deeper and deeper into the game. And for us, it's really about celebrating that and making sure that, like, if you never got a chance to see Daymendo's Slayer, well, you know, Daymendo's pulling up, maybe you'll get a chance to see it and see why people talk it up so much. Same thing with GC Yoshi's Bedman. Or, you know, all kinds of top tier talent. Just, you know, they show up, we get to see them, you know, dust off the character, take it for a spin. But you also get to see the new folks who learned from watching those videos and take their own spin and adapt it. So it's gonna be a ton of fun. There's gonna be some danger times. There's gonna be some drop combos. There's gonna be some you know, just like 100 to 0, like, you know, 100% combos. All kinds of nasty stuff that's gonna come out just because. People been grinding to make that stuff happen, and it's always hype as hell.
Yeah, we're gonna get to see like the regions who've been holding it down besides us get together, show off their kids, right? Like, I'm always hyping up our kids. Like, I like to say that our kids could take anybody else's kids, right? But you know, they're showing up, and you know, they're signing up, and they are coming out to play the game that they love, that for a lot of them didn't get a chance to play at its height or what have you. But you know, it's like a new age for us, and this is kind of just like, I like to say, it's just the beginning. All of this is like just one tournament for that year. There will be more. We're going to like keep riding this thing till the wheels fall off, right? And with this is just, for us, it's another major where we get to show off the game we love. And, you know, shout out to Vortex Gallery for giving us the platform, right? Like, you know, y'all been holding it down for all these games. Like, you know, obviously I heard about y'all since before, you know, the rebrand, but like, from what I gathered, like, you're always like holding it down. And when we see like other people holding it down, we were like, yeah, like, you know, what we're doing, it's the right thing. Like, and I expect like just groups of people just hyping up their person. Oh, you don't know blank. Like that's on you. And everyone's like, oh yeah, get them, and all that stuff. And it's gonna be a great time. You know, we're probably gonna try to recreate those world lobbies that they did in the Combo Breaker. It's like hanging out. You know, maybe people try to stretch on them, do a couple twirls. You know, wild stuff. But it's gonna be a great time. You know, like, it's going to be, you know, a great time for all of us to meet, probably for the first time for some of us. So like, it's gonna be hype.
Oh, it'll be just like one giant meetup, finally.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well, this, like I said, hearing you guys talk about Rev got me excited about Rev, so you're doing a good job. But yes, thank you again so much for taking your time. For sure. And, you know, I'm always down to teach BBCF, so, you know, if you want to like dabble in that, I got you.
Get that exchange program. Yeah, exactly.
Equivalent exchange.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much for holding down Rev at VG and like literally everywhere else as well. It was a very nice time and a pleasure to talk to you two. Thank you for giving me your time.
The pleasure was all ours. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. And you know, like, we honestly, we hope that like the love that we're showing for our game, like, that inspires other people to like be like, you know what, my game ain't dead. Like, I want to put in the time to bring it back, because, you know, like we said, you know, shout to Hagure and Hano, you know, y'all and Brad, y'all were the ones who were like showing the love in our scene, and it inspired us.
Yeah, it's really funny to think about, like, yeah, we've been describing a lot of the of Rev2 and Vortex Gallery as kind of like older games, but to me, Vortex Gallery is the future, right? Like, the future of the FGC for me is not, oh, these are the main games, these are the Evo supported games, or these are the games of the publisher funding, right? I never want to go to an event that's only for one game ever again, right? I want to roll up and I want to be able to go to like any major or even any like regional or local in the world and just be like, what they got on tap today. Yeah, maybe they got the new stuff, that's fine, but I want to see people bring out whatever it is that keeps them playing, and Vortex Gallery makes sure that that can happen. Y'all did it at Evo, time and time again. Y'all did it during the pandemic, and now like we are beyond stoked to be able to work with y'all to make sure that Rev2 is on that list, right? It's here every time y'all want to run it.
Nice. And I'm pretty sure I can speak for everyone in 956 is that we're happy to have you on board with us.
Hell yeah.
But alright. I guess before we leave, is there anything you want to say or shill? Like, this is your time.
I think there's only one thing we gotta say. We want y'all to do something for us.
What's that?
We want y'all to love your
Love
lives.
your life.
Be good to one another.
Be good to one another.
And play some
Play
motherfucking
Guilty
Gear.
Gear.
That was it. That was the one F-bomb, all right? We used it. We used it where it mattered. Mwah.
Hey, well, you heard them. So go play some Guilty Gear. Again, thank you all for joining me tonight. I'm Chickzama, and I'm here with Pat and AALanline, and we are signing off.
Peace out, y'all.
Take it easy.